I am unpacking some of the most amazing secrets and clinical insights that I learned at a recent CellCore conference. I never go to conferences, but this was one I didn't want to miss, and you are not going to want to miss this episode because we are talking about all the things, all the cool clinical tips and nuggets that I found out. In fact, one of the coolest was, did you know that your tonsils and your umbilical cord have far more secrets than you think? So stay tuned. We're about to get into it. Welcome to the Clinical Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm Ronda, your no-fluff, tell it like it is business bestie for wellness practitioners just like you who want to build a practice you love and make a bigger impact and a little money while you're at it. So if you're ready to ditch the overwhelm, attract your dream, ideal patients, and finally run your practice with complete confidence, you're in the right place. Each week, we're tackling things from programs to patient retention to marketing strategies that actually work, sprinkled, of course, with a little sass, a lot of heart, and the step-by-step strategies that will help you get there. So grab your cup of coffee, your notebook, or whatever keeps you going, and let's build a practice you love and a life you love together. Well, good morning or afternoon or wherever you happen to be, whatever time you're listening to the podcast. I'm so glad you're here. As I mentioned, I was recently at a CellCore conference in Boise, Idaho, and I had not been to Boise for a very long time. And I don't know, it's been so long, I don't know that I could say what the difference is now versus before, except that it just was really fun. We had quite a little group of 8 or 10 of us that kind of hung out together. It was a great time. We had so much fun. So, as a speaker, I've been all over the country. I've met thousands and thousands and thousands of healthcare practitioners over the years teaching seminars, and I love to teach. And so most of the time I'm teaching. I don't go very often because I don't have time, and there's usually not anything that's really appealing to me. Like, I'm just not interested. But I'm very curious about CellCore, the company, the products from CellCore, because I've started to kind of integrate them a little bit with my own patients and in my own life, and I'm seeing some pretty great differences. I'm thinking, okay, I need to go understand a little bit more. Well, they put on this big conference called Eco25, but there were a few little clinical tips and things that, you know how you know something and then you think, I kind of forgot about that. So I'm just going to tell you what I thought were some of the highlights. There were a lot. And so as I was going back through my notes preparing for this podcast, there were so many like little nuggets of things, but I'm going to give you the high ones that I think might be helpful for you. So grab a pencil, paper, pen, whatever you've got, your phone, I don't care. But let's dive in. I'm going to just kind of give you some of my favorite highlights. So they're broken up a little bit by topic, and some of you may know, some of you may not know, but these were just of interest to me, and I thought that I'd share them. So one of the things is LPS. LPS is a toxin, an endotoxin that's secreted in the gut by gram-negative bacteria, and we know that it really does a lot of damage to the gut lining when these gram-negative bacteria are in the gut. So it's basically an endotoxin as a result of dysbiosis. But what was interesting to me was that when you have triglycerides that are high, you may want to suspect dysbiosis, and likely you could have as well some LPS because they are present in triglycerides. So when you have high triglycerides, that could be an indicator of dysbiosis and the presence of biofilms in the gut. So there you go. I don't think I really realized that. And also, one of the speakers talked about triglycerides being the second greatest predictor of heart disease. So I kind of knew that one, but the LPS and using the elevated triglycerides to detect or indicate possible dysbiosis / biofilms was really interesting to me. They talked a lot about bile acids, of course, because one of their signature products is called TUDCA. It's called Advanced TUDCA, I think, and it's spelled TUDCA. It is pretty much a miraculous supplement for gallbladder. And I've been taking it because my gallbladder can get a little bit junky, probably because of the alcohol. Though I don't drink, but don't judge me. I don't know why my gallbladder gets grumpy sometimes, but it does. But this has really made a big difference. And yes, I've tried all the things. I've done LiveTon, I've done GB Support, and I like those. And GB Support from Doctor's Research, one of my favorites for gallbladder. But I thought, hey, I'm just going to add this in. Not going to hurt anything. But I think what we don't realize and what I don't talk enough about, I think, with all of you is that there are bile acids. We've always just thought of like bile being the thing that the gallbladder secretes upon the presence of fat in the meal through cholecystokinin. However, there are secondary and tertiary bile acids, and they now know there's a deeper research going on with this, and they now know that there are literally thousands of bile acid modifications happening in the body. Thousands. And so not only does it help emulsify and break down fat, but the secondary bile acids are incredibly toxic to gut bacteria. The bad guys, overgrowth, dysbiosis. So part of any gut restoration protocol should absolutely include bile support, period. End of story. And that for me was, fairly recent within the last 5 years. I started to really understand that these secondary bile acids are really critical. But not only that, they play a big role in hormone conjugation and secretion. So if you have a hormone patient, you have a bile patient. If you have a junky gallbladder, of course, we're going to do that. But also, if you have impaired detoxification pathways, you need to make sure that bile is present. So when you're trying to detoxify someone, let's say we put them on the 21-day from standard process or some other detoxification program, you may want to think about adding in a little bit of bile to the protocol. And if you use TUDCA, for instance, from CellCore, that TUDCA, you could just add in 2 per day to your detoxification protocol. And that is going to help so much with that thinning and mobilizing that bile so that we can get the good effects of those secondary thousands of bile acid metabolic reactions. So that was my, 2 cents about bile. Now, there was one of the speakers talked a lot about mast cells. And, we talk about like histamine intolerance. That's kind of it's a thing sometimes. People just get sensitive to that. And there are a lot of triggers that can happen that can cause these mast cells to go, crazy. But it's not just acute responses. We think of like, okay, well, I have a histamine response from a mast cell because I'm allergic to something in the air. But mast cells can be active for more chronic or longer term activities like autoimmune diseases or the long-term presence of pathogens, which I don't think I really thought about that. I think I knew that, but I didn't really connect the dots. So this kind of helped me put those pieces together. But there were 4 types of mast cells. There's the mucosal mast cells. So those are along all the mucosal membranes, right? They're like the watchdogs of the immune system. So anything that's coming in, a pathogen, an allergen, something that's irritating, those mast cells are going to release the cytokines and the histamines and all the stuff to recruit the immune cells and begin that inflammatory response. The second type of mast cell is a connective tissue mast cell. And these mast cells help with wound healing and regulating vessel dilation and so on. And they're more commonly seen with inflammatory conditions like arthritis or fibrosis or something like that. So these are connective tissue mast cells. Then there's lymphatic mast cells, and those are influencing permeability in the vascular system, how well the vessels contract, and also immune trafficking through the lymphatic vessels. So when these lymphatic mast cells are activated, they weaken the lymphatic walls and they make them more permeable. This one was like, I had to go back and read my notes 2 or 3 times. So basically, it's leaky lymph. We talk about leaky gut. The lymph vessels actually get permeable and they start to accumulate fluid. You're going to get poor drainage. You're going to get all kinds of dysregulation in there because of these lymphatic mast cells. It was fascinating to me. Then the 4th kind were the ANS mast cells, and these are very close to the nerve endings and those sites. And that includes the carotid bodies, the heart, the hypothalamus, the pineal, and the adrenal glands. So these autonomic nervous system mast cells are located in multiple places in the body. This was really interesting. It was a fascinating conversation for me. But here was kind of the kicker for me. Mast cells have a high affinity for estrogen receptors. Let me say that again. Mast cells have a high affinity for estrogen receptors. And in the presence of estradiol or E2, okay, this is so then during a reproductive years for a woman, E2 augments the secretion of the mast cells. So during ovulation, when E2 surge happens, right, we get that nice E2 surge in the mid-cycle at ovulation, that can activate and degranulate these mast cells, and women can get symptomatic. Whereas in the luteal phase of the cycle, progesterone stabilizes the mast cells. Fascinating. Just fascinating. So I've got to go figure that one out too. And then they also said there was some research linked that mast cells play a role in endometriosis, which is not surprising, but I don't think I'd ever put both of those in the same sentence. But as soon as she said it, I went, oh, yeah, well, duh, of course they would. Electromagnetic frequencies are also a trigger for mast cells. This was a new one for me. It can lead to just increased histamine release, and that can explain sometimes the random symptoms that you see with a patient that's electromagnetically sensitive and their random illnesses. It could be that the EMFs are triggering these mast cells to release histamines. And then there was another condition that I'd never heard of. It's called vibratory urticaria, which is a very rare form of itching and rashy hives triggered by vibration, friction, or repetitive movements. And the three things that they said that will trigger this is music, vibroplate, the vibrating plates that lots of people have, vibroplate, and ultrasound. So interesting. I never had heard of that before, or if I did, I forgot. The two things that they recommended was just to get drainage moving in the body to start to clear out some of those mast cells. And, me being a standard process person for so many years, they never really had anything that was specific for drainage. We always kind of had to get the fluids moving in the body, get those stagnant things moving so that detoxification worked better. You're never going to be effective in a protocol. If somebody is really sick, you've got to get them moving, got to get the fluids moving. So CellCore has several drainage products, and this is not a CellCore. I'm not promoting them. I'm just telling you what I'm learning. But they have two. One is called Lymph Active. So this one would be good if you think there's leaky lymph. And then the other one that's just kind of a whole body, really good one. It's just called Drainage Activator. Both of them are from CellCore. Someone else was talking about COVID and people that got sick with COVID. And they're now, now all the research, all the things are coming out. So we know, what's happening. However, what they did say is that the people that responded the worst, what they're now finding is the people that had the poorer outcomes or had a higher risk of mortality with COVID-19 had dysregulated blood sugar. And that blood sugar seems to be the common denominator with many of these patients that got sick. So I had to say, I looked at myself, I was really, really sick in 2021. And my husband was hardly sick at all. He got it. He was over it in a day or two, had a bad headache, didn't feel real good. I was down, on oxygen, down. And I thought, oh, yeah, probably, huh? That's probably exactly what was happening. So that was fascinating to me. Then Darren Schmidt, I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but I've known Darren for a long time. He's a standard process guy from forever ago. Lives in up north somewhere. I don't know where, Minnesota or Missouri. I don't know, Missouri, Minnesota, somewhere far north. But he spoke at the conference. So it was great to see him. But he talked about vitamin B1, and he's got a YouTube channel that's fascinating. And if you've never followed Darren Schmidt on YouTube, you should go find him. Darren, Darren Schmidt, Schmidt. But he talked about one nutrient and one nutrient only, and that was vitamin B1. I mean, he brought receipts. Let me tell you what, this guy was all over it with B1. I just literally typed out a whole bunch of notes. I'm going to kind of go over them with you if that's okay. Now, I know I can hear some of you saying, well, yeah, but B1 is a synthetic. I know, I get it. But just listen, and then you can decide whatever you want to do. Here's my take. I think sometimes people are so deficient, and yes, Western medicine / the Western thinking about nutrition is to isolate. And although I don't like that, I've often wondered if adding an isolate in when someone is so severely deficient may help raise the waterline a little bit so that then when we provide the complex, we don't have so far to lift the boat. You know what I'm saying? We don't have so much recovery to do. And I think that's kind of where Darren's probably coming from, is to give some B1, even though it's a synthetic, but get a good quality B1, but you may just want to supplement with that in order to bring the body back to a little closer state of balance before you start to heal it with, B complex or, Cataplex B core or something like that. So I'm just going to read you what he said. So B1 was the first nutrient discovered by Otto Warburg in 1931, and it's needed to complete the Krebs cycle. It brings fuel into the mitochondria, and it converts pyruvate into acetyl-CoA, and that actually starts the Krebs cycle. So B1 is the catalyst that starts the Krebs cycle. And then he went into, it converts this into that, and lactate to pyruvate, and it stops lactate. He went into all of that, blah, blah, blah. But he said it was needed to make acetylcholine, serotonin, and amino acids. It is the best nutrient for nerve cells because it improves oxygen to the nerves and that's needed for all of the neurotransmitters. One thing that was very fascinating, and he brought receipts, let me tell you, he said that high doses of vitamin B1 is incredibly effective in Alzheimer's and dementia patients, literally bringing them back from not being able to speak or be talking in circles, to having full-on conversations. Shocking is what that is. So I know someone who's in a care home right now, and she doesn't know her family. She's verbal, but she just talks in circles, and she's fairly young. And so I'm going to be talking to the family about doing this. Like, look, there's no harm. What am I going to do? How am I going to hurt someone with a high dose B1? If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but it sure is worth a try. He said B1 helps with vagus nerve health and function. Lots of deficiency symptoms that may be just misinterpreted or assumed to be something else. So I'm going to read these to you. This is what he wrote. He said dysbiosis, these are the symptoms of, this is what a B1 deficiency is related to. Dysbiosis, GERD, bloating, SIBO, reflux, leaky gut, IBS, IBD, constipation, diarrhea, allergies, sensitivities to food, environmental things, etc., congestive heart failure, sarcopenia, and insomnia. So, we have a patient that presents with those things. What if it, I'm not saying it is, but what if B1 deficiency is just so rampant that we're using supplements or protocols and all the magical stuff that we do, and we're using those things, but patient's not getting better. I mean, just saying, what if it's just that one nutrient that's missing, that we need to high dose that bad boy for a little while and then see what we get? I'm just throwing it out there. It's an interesting concept to me. So he went on to say what causes B1 deficiency. Stress depletes it so fast. High use of brain and body. Now, this would be for endurance athletes or professional athletes, but I think I fit into the high use brain category, not because I'm a brainiac, but because I'm always on my computer and I'm always thinking. I'm creating, I'm thinking about protocols, I'm thinking about business, I'm thinking about market, I'm high use brain. I don't let my brain rest enough. So I thought, I probably am deficient. Most forms of exercise, especially like cardio exercise, etc., he said there is research to show that walking does not deplete B1, but other more aggressive forms of exercise, cardio, hour on the treadmill, whatever, that it does. So those things make it worse. Tannins from coffee and tea, as I sit here with my coffee. Alcohol, as I confessed earlier. All medications deplete B1. Mold, specifically Aspergillus mycotoxins, parasites, poor digestive function, white bread, and birth control pills. So that's it's a kind of everybody right there. That's like all the people that we see. Somebody's going to fit in there somewhere. And so could B1 be something that we may want to consider? I don't know. There you go. So there's just a few more things and I'll wrap it. We'll land the plane for today. One thing that was really fascinating to me, I did not realize this, and I'm not embarrassed, but I think, I probably should have known this. When a mother delivers a baby, we know that the umbilical cord, right, attaches the two of them together. So you and I are going to be against cord clamping. We are going to wait until that bad boy has completely stopped pulsing and there's no life left in that thing before we clip it. What I did not realize was that we know the benefits of the baby, right? Benefit to the baby. But remember, the umbilical cord is a two-way thing. Babies are born with just ginormous amount of stem cells, right? Well, after the baby's born, there are a huge number of stem cells that go back to the mother via the umbilical cord to help repair damaged tissue, stressed tissue during pregnancy and especially delivery, like the uterus, like the vaginal canal, like her brain, like her digestive, all the things that have been damaged. But, labor itself, there's a few tissues, but these huge number of stem cells go back to the mother to help her heal. In addition, then, to the benefits that the baby's getting. So it's a two-way thing. I always think about the umbilical cord as like giving nutrients to the baby, but no. It goes back the other way. Baby contributes a ton of stem cells back to the mother for healing. Isn't that cool? So let's see. We talked about trauma. This was really fascinating. There was a woman that spoke that recently lost her life, soul, heart partner. And she was visibly, very... It still really just had only been a few months since that loss had happened. And she was talking about people that have trauma, that our job as providers is to make the body feel safe. And what happens is we tend to want to separate or dissociate, right? When there's been a severe trauma, it could be, a sudden death of a child or a loved one, or, could be a divorce, or, a child that had something horrible happen to them, or something. But we disassociate, and so then the body can't handle the energetic demand, and safety is prioritized by the body above all else. So the soul or the trauma leaves, and it separates because the body literally cannot handle the energetic demand. Think of it like a current, like getting plugged into an outlet. There's so much emotional, energetic charge from that trauma that the body would go like electrocute, turn black and char and go away. Like it can't handle the charge, the energetic charge. So the dissociation happens, and how we can help them. Now they may need to be having some, therapy or, EMDR or NET or something, right? They're getting some help. But our job is to help them create safety in the body. Right? So that the body itself, because we need to help them bring that trauma back into the body and then heal from it, not let it live outside the body. This is what happens with children that are abused. There's so much trauma, the body can't hold it, so they dissociate. So she talked about the ways that we can do that. One is barefoot grounding is tremendous, she said, for trauma, rebuilding trauma. Stillness can be helpful, but sometimes for people, it's not helpful because then they just relive the trauma. But barefoot grounding, vagal toning, laughter, playing, anything that's pleasurable. And then, of course, the obvious like chiropractic or acupuncture, massage, craniosacral, that kind of thing. She also said, and this was interesting to me, that when the trauma happens, the voltage gets depleted from the cell. So I know this is a bit like woo-woo, but, go with me here. I'm kind of letting you in on my thought process or my mental journey through all of this. And she said, we need to add voltage back to the cell so that the cells can function because of this trauma that happened that depleted them, depletes the body. So she said, one thing we have to do is get the fascia moving, right? So that's where craniosacral, or if you do fascial work, we've got to get the fascia moving. The second thing she said was to make sure that you provide electrolytes. And we think, sodium, potassium, her blood looks fine. No. We need to get voltage back into the cell. And the way that we do that is with electrolytes. And the electrolytes are needed for mitochondrial function. Duh. So we need to give them electrolytes. I don't think that would have been my first thought with a trauma patient to say, oh, let's get you on electrolytes. I would have maybe thought about grounding, et cetera, but that was a good one, that the electrolytes actually help support the mitochondria. Then we talked about depression, toxins leading to depression. One thing that was interesting is that people that have depression have a 30% higher risk of having a tonsillectomy 5 years after a diagnosis. So that was interesting. If I understood that right, someone else told me, no, it was the other way, that there's a 30% increased risk of tonsillectomy after. Yeah, I said that after depression, but somebody said it's the other way around. If you have tonsillectomy, you're more likely to have depression. But either way, there's a correlation. I got to go clear that up because I think I had it wrong in my notes, but that was interesting to me. C-section babies have a higher risk of depression. And then we know that the effects of the jab, 68% of people that got the jab have an increase in depression, 43, almost 44% increase in anxiety, and a 94% increase in sleep disorders. And that was from an article out of nature.com. Anxiety is living in the future and depression is living in the past. I thought that was really good. It's really true. Anxiety is living in the future. Depression is living in the past. And then fertility, we talked about like optimizing follicular health, that it really takes a good year and a half. One thing that was interesting about that was that the egg chooses the sperm. And I always thought it was the first sperm that got there, but the egg chooses the sperm. And as soon as the sperm comes in contact with the egg actually removes the protein shell and repairs any damaged mitochondria in the sperm. And so if the egg does not have enough mitochondria, enough strength, enough health, it can't deal with the sperm, and we're going to end up with a failed conception. So that was interesting little fact. Another factoid was that birth control pills started within 2 years of a young girl going into, starting her cycle, can permanently permanently alter the HPO axis for the rest of her life. That was very fascinating to me. Let's see. Microplastics are strongly linked to IBD. Patients that have irritable bowel disorders have an average of 50% more microplastics in their gut. And those microplastics deteriorate the gut microbiota. And polysorbate 80, we've heard a lot about that lately, that also tears up the gut lining. So seed oils, mercury exposure, candida, all that stuff, we know that is all there. But one thing was kind of tied back to this drainage conversation was that if you don't work on these drainage pathways before you start fighting pathogens, going after viruses, going after the detoxification situation, you have a higher risk of adverse events. So if you spend a month before you're going to do any kind of aggressive detox, you may want to spend a month just working on drainage and getting the body to move. That's the drainage activator. They have 3 or 4 of them. You could also use castor oil or Epsom salts or skin brushing or sweating. All of that's going to help open and get things moving as well. So just because, we often think just because we've removed the toxins in the environment doesn't mean that they're out of the body. So we have to do the things that we need to do to get them to move out of the body. And then a couple more things I would say. They said that I don't remember who said this, but HDL and triglycerides, I'd never heard this one before, should be pretty much the same. They should be the same number, 1 to 1. So if your HDL is 135 and the triglycerides are 130, that would be 1 to 1, right? When those two are 1 to 1, they're about the same, HDL and triglycerides, that means that the patient is engaged in a regular, healthy amount of exercise. I thought that was fascinating. So I'll leave you with that. That's a good one to end on because it's a good little clinical pearl. So I hope that this was helpful for you. I think I missed being with my people, and this was a great place to connect and be with people. But it was nice because there was freedom to be able to talk about the things that you and I hold so dear, which is the value of life and the value of protecting our bodies and not giving into the vaccines and not giving into maybe the bigger agenda that's at play. And it was just so nice to be in a group of people that embodied all of that and weren't afraid to talk about it. There was no politically correct speech here, which I'm like, sign me up. I'll be there every time. There wasn't politically correct. It wasn't a company trying to with a highfalutin lawyer that's trying to make sure everything's okay. No. They just were who they were. And I love that. I had a great time. So thank you for letting me just share my thoughts with you. I hope you pulled a few little, clinical tidbits, and I'll probably be dropping more of this inside Clinical Academy. I might come back on here and do another clinical podcast as well. But if you love this, let me know because I don't mind talking about clinical, but on the podcast here, I'm mostly talking about business stuff. Most of my clinical information is in Clinical Academy, but if you'd like more clinical little nuggets here and there, let me know. Just shoot me a message. Just send an email to support@rondanelson.com and let me know, because I'd love to hear from you. So listen, if you love this episode, share it with someone and get the word out about what we do together as alternative healthcare practitioners in this crazy functional medicine world where we're always learning and always growing. I would love to be able to impact more people, but I'm so grateful for you being along for the ride with me. So for now, I'm signing off, my friend. Keep trusting your instincts, trust your guts, follow the breadcrumbs, and show up as big as you can for the people that need you the most. Take care. I'll see you next week.